Hey, it's your bestie Lo. Welcome to Thrive with Lois, the podcast dedicated to helping you become the best version of yourself and to thrive in all areas of your life. You're here because you want to grow inside and out. So, are you ready? Let's thrive together. Today, I am joined by Neil Scott, who is co-owner and founder of Leo, known as Lift Each Other, a up-and-coming studio in southeast London. Not only are they dedicated to building stronger bodies, but also stronger minds. Neil is also known as an aircraft engineer by trade, so Neil is honestly one of the most hardworking people that I know, and today I have him on the podcast to talk all about building a strong mindset, building a strong work ethic, and I couldn't have had a better guest joining me today. So Neil, thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me on the show. I hope I can enlighten your guests with all of the tricks to finding out how to improve your mindset, because I'm very much in the process of doing that. I think a lot of things that you listen to on social media these days are from people who've already been through it, not necessarily people who are in it. And I feel like we are both definitely in it at the minute.
Yeah, definitely. And we was having a little chat before starting the podcast today, and we kind of said, like, we need to stop talking because we need to say this on the podcast. But we are both very much building up our businesses. We both have a lot of goals that we're working towards. And it does feel hard at times, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we both got 5-year plans, 10-year plans. And a lot of things that haven't even come to fruition yet. And I think a topic that you touched on is like, how do we keep pushing ahead, even though right now in this minute we might not feel successful?
Definitely. So what keeps you going?
I think it's a combination of two things. It's the things that you're running away from, and there's the things that you're running towards. So for me, with Lift Each Other, I'm running towards the idea that I can be personally responsible for improving the lives of my community, and then that can have a ripple effect. Because when you build someone to be strong within themselves, they're then strong to take care of their family, and then they can build someone to be strong, and we just have this ripple effect, which it sounds cheesy, but it literally could change the world. Like, that's the act of one person in their community doing as much as they can to be a positive influence, affecting the next people, and hopefully they step up and do the same.
So it's like having that purpose, isn't it, that drives you?
Exactly that, yeah. Which I think having purpose and having meaning is almost more important than having immediate happiness in your life. And then there's the other thing, which is, what are you running away from? So for me, like, I'm running away from, or I'm making sure I'm never in a position where I've got regret later in life. So I want to know, I'm going to go on a bit of David Goggins here, but his favourite one is when he's sitting in front of God at the end of his life, he wants to have ticked off every possible achievement on God's list. And I want to be sitting in the same position where I've done as much as I possibly can. Yeah, 100%. But you can use fear to push you forward as much as you can hope. So yeah, so I'm scared of not fulfilling my potential. It transcends motivation in a way, because some days you'll feel motivated, you want to like smash any project out that you've got. Other days you'll wake up and that motivation won't be there, but that the fear might be. And then if it depends how you want to trick yourself into working that day.
So your schedule at the moment is crazy. You know, obviously you work, you're very, very full, your full-time busy job as an aircraft engineer, and then behind the scenes you're working on building Leo. Yeah. How do you manage that all? You know, you've got such a strong work ethic. Have you always been driven?
I would say absolutely not. Like, I've not always been driven, but one thing I've always had in my life is sports and fitness. Like, from the age of 3-year-old, like, I was like training to swim like 2 or 3 times a week. And then from that, you just build up a routine, or you build up lessons to success, which you don't really realize at the time. But the first thing was consistency, like turning up to that swimming pool every week for X amount of sessions, week on, and then trying to compete with the people around you. I think they were huge lessons that I had instilled in us from a child. But you don't really realise that until you're a bit older, and then you're thinking like, right, I've got this goal, I want to build a studio. How do I get to that point? So you immediately fall back into those habits of, right, I'll set up a routine and then I'll start trying to stick to those goals. So you can work your way backwards. You can have your overall goal, and then you pick little steps on how to achieve that goal, and then you just make sure you do that little bit every single week, and hopefully that'll amount to an achievement in the end.
So how do you tackle challenges?
I think one of the biggest lessons I learned when I was building the studio is that you're the only one that's going to do it. Nobody's going to come through with a cape on and save you. Like, if you don't do it, nobody else will. And when that becomes absolute fact, I think the best comes out of you. Like, nobody's going to come and build a studio. Nobody's going to come and like put these platforms down the way you want them. Nobody's going to level the floor off. Nobody's going to build the racks. Nobody's going to design the studio for you. It's all just up to you. I think like that when you realise that, you just start driving yourself. And there's also, again, the fear of, if you don't drive yourself, then what's going to happen? Like, what's the alternative to not being your best? The alternative is I wouldn't have a studio, and things wouldn't have gone well, and we suddenly wouldn't have a product which can then take the next step forward in making revenue. We would have had just a big pool of debt. That would be the alternative. So again, using that fear to drive myself forward is a huge part of what keeps me going. And I also believe, like, in my full-time job being an aircraft engineer, I think there's so much room for me to grow. Like, in the past couple of years, I've gone from being like so it's a B1, so like a licensed engineer. So I'll sign off other people's work. So I've been like an individual, then I've been part of a team, and now I'm actually leading that team. So like my own personal growth within that role is really attractive, and that's what I love about being an aircraft engineer at the minute. I think it's just got so much room for me to grow as a person. I think that's what keeps me driven in work. And then obviously what keeps me driven in the studio is the variety. It's different to aircraft, but also that's my passion, and that's my impact on like possibly thousands of people around us.
So that's so that progression, that room for progression, seeing change, that motivates
progress.
you.
That's a huge driver. Yeah, feeling like I'm making progress is a huge motivator. Like when I'm in work and everyone's gone home and I'm still in there at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night trying to make sure this aircraft's in the best position I can put it in. Like, they're the moments when I feel proud, when I'm on my own, like just pushing on ahead. Nobody's there kind of cheering me on. Nobody's telling me not to do it, but nobody's encouraging me to do it. But I'm just there, just trying to be exceptional. Like, that I've found that meaning recently that wasn't necessarily there before. And I think, like I said, going back to like when you were a kid and when you're doing sports and you've got that routine, you've got that training program, that almost builds you up to something. But it's not until you're a bit older that you understand what that something could be, and it's you being your best. So that is a huge driver. Becoming my best self, becoming my strongest self. So almost in a selfish way, but you've got to be your strongest self to support the people around you. So that, like, which leads to another motivator of mine is like, I want to be the provider for my family at the end of the day, like for me and Lauren.
What about on the hard days? So you've just said that you're very motivated by seeing those changes. What about on those hard days where you don't see the growth, when you don't get that instant gratification? How do you manage those?
So the hard days, I think I feel it the most because, I get up early on mornings to train.
4 a.m.
I get up at 3 a.m. I clean the studio first, and then I start training at 4. They're on my work days. But I think, the hardest point is when you first sit up out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and all you want to do is go back. But that's when the fear comes in. If I don't get up at that point and I don't start smashing out my routine, I'm only going to feel shit later. I don't necessarily feel amazing, like in that, because that's a tiny little step. That one day's progress doesn't make you feel amazing, but it will make you feel shit if you don't do it.
Having that routine.
And I'll beat myself up if I don't do it. I'll be like, you could have got up this morning, you could have trained, you could have been like at 5 o'clock the same day. If I'd missed training that morning, I'll be like, you could have got up this morning, there's no reason why you couldn't have. And then I'll start getting in my own head, and then the next morning I'll make sure I get up at 3 o'clock.
So it's that feeling that motivates you.
It's a fear of not being exceptional, like, because I know for a fact that means that I wasn't as good as I could have been on that day.
Where do you think that comes from, that like fear of not feeling exceptional, almost like that fear of failure?
I think like it's embedded in like every man wants to feel needed, wants to feel important, and if he isn't strong enough to provide something, then that is going to make him feel insecure about himself. And I think you've got to, the relationship you build with yourself is consistently turning up on those mornings where you didn't want to. And then that gives you confidence within yourself to say that, look, I've got this challenge and I'm going to live up to it.
So to somebody who's listening to this, who is maybe facing some obstacles with building a strong mindset, maybe they're constantly faced with challenges and distractions, and maybe they're in a bit of a fixed mindset at the moment, kind of everything else is going wrong around me, that's why I can't do X, Y and Z, or blaming external factors or other people for their lack of success. What would you say to those people?
A few things. The first thing you got to do is be honest and notice the times when you are blaming other people, and try and take as much responsibility as you can for that situation. Even if you know it wasn't your fault, still think about the things you could have done better, and then you'll always be in that growth mindset. And then I think another one, which I said before, is you've got to build that relationship with yourself. So if you make a routine of small improvements each week, every time you commit and you hit one of those targets, you're improving the relationship with yourself and building up confidence that you know you're going to do them. It's about building yourself from the inside, which is, again, like just being honest with what the situation is. And that builds self-confidence. And I would say the first step in that for me would be training, and being able to train your mind through your body. So if you plan, like any good fitness program is going to have a plan. It's going to have, you set a date, you set a time, you turn up at the gym, you do X, Y, and Z in your plan. That it's just going to have so many good effects on you. One, you know how to plan your week. You know, like there's a saying, if you want something to get done, give it to a busy person. And I think one of these videos that I watched was like, busy people have this expanded capacity. But I don't necessarily think that's the case. I just think a busy person, to get all of their shit done in a day, needs to have a plan. And when you give a busy person a task, they're going to see all of the other tasks that they've got that day, and then they're going to plan in exactly where they do it at that moment, at that time, on that day. And they know if they don't commit to that, it's going to be missed, and it's going to make tomorrow even harder. So I feel like start with the basic training program, because you're going to have, there's so many health benefits. Obviously, your body is directly connected to your mind, and then when you start turning up, you start making physical progress. Your physical prowess, like when that changes, you'll have a psychological change. You'll be more confident in your workplace. You'll be more confident, even like around your partner. They're just being able to be confident in your body, be naked around them. Like you can have these so many like knock-on effects, and I think that's what Lift Each Other's all about. Starting these people on that lifestyle change, and it's as simple as just making a basic plan each week, sticking to it, building your relationship with yourself, building your progress at work, because everything's almost the same, because you'll plan your training routine in, you'll plan the days you go into work, you'll plan time off like with your family. I think planning in general gives you so much freedom. It doesn't tie you up. It makes sure you get done what you need to get done so you can have the time off that you want to have off. Unfortunately at the minute, my plan is just non-stop working.
How do you plan for your week?
So I plan for the year. I've got an entire year's like schedule, so I know every day I'm in work. I know every day I plan on overtime. I know every day I want to spend working on the studio. And then I just make sure I just commit to it. So every month I'll know, right, this month you got to get 77 hours overtime. I'll know how many hours I want to do over the whole year. I'll know how much money I want to have in the bank at the end of that year, and then that's all part of like my 5-year goal.
Is there any flexibility within that plan, or
Yeah.
rigid with it?
Plans always fall apart, but it's about not beating yourself up for missing that plan. It's like, how do you get back on track?
But having that plan is very intentional, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and it says, this is when I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. So having that roadmap is that intention that you're going to set yourself up for success. You're going to do those things.
Yeah.
Sometimes life happens and you might need to adjust slightly and you might need to move things about, and that's cool. But
yeah,
I personally
but because you've already got that landscape, you know where you can pick them up and put them back down.
Yeah, definitely.
You've already got that plan there.
I think if you're going into your week without having a plan, you are setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah. Just like if you walk into a gym with no plan, you might go in and have a great session one day, but then most likely you've overtrained, so the next day you're going to find it harder. And then you don't have that progressive overload from week to week to week. And I also think you can, like, since we're on the topic of work ethic, I think you can apply that progressive overload to your mind as well. So like a good program, we'll take strength for example, will always have you working close to failure but not at failure. And I think you can apply that to your mindset. So people, more often than not, when they get mentally fatigued, they start putting labels on it like burnout. And I think you would never have a powerlifter who failed a rep saying he was at burnout. He would just go again the next day, but readjust his lifts, readjust his percentages. So like when I start getting fatigued, I'll realise I'm tired. I'll realise I need some rest. I'm probably in a bit of a bad mood. I'll make sure I get that rest in, which for me is just making sure I get 8 hours sleep. And then that just revamps my hormones. I realised the week before I was on a bit of a low, but now it's time to go back again. And then push to these higher percentages, to these 80% fatigue, 90% fatigue. And then you gain this capacity over time of mental fatigue and how much you can take. And you learn yourself when you need to step back and when you need to put the foot down on the gas. So for me, at the minute, when I'm in work, like the 12-hour shifts, I do my training beforehand, I do my 12-hour shift, I do any studio stuff afterwards, I probably get 20 minutes and then I'm back to sleep. So that's when I'm on shift. And then I try and make sure when I'm off shift, I get a minimum of 8 hours sleep, because I know that that's my time to recover. And if I want to do studio work that day, my mind needs to be switched on. I need to be working on Lift Each Other. And if I continue to push myself through with only 3 or 4 hours sleep, I'm not going to get the best for Lift Each Other.
So what system do you have in place? What do you prioritise other than sleep to make sure that you are feeling your very best to show up and get the things done?
Sleep's huge. I always drink enough water through the day, and I always get my calories in. Like I always eat more than enough food. And then I just kind of look for what I've learned to be my red flags, which isn't usually, I can usually continue working, but it's usually my mood swings and my self-talk in my own head. So if I start like beating myself up, like, I don't know, maybe I didn't have a conversation, like a hard conversation in work that day with a mechanic who was like underperforming. Like if I start beating myself up on a night time, I'll obviously realise that was an issue, but there's a level to it. if I consistently do that, then I'm probably fatigued and I probably need to get some rest in. But if it's just, because that could just be a normal cue where I'll go the next day, I'll have a word with them, like everything will be spot on. But then if that consistent negative talk, then I'll be like, right, I need to, on my days off, now I need to schedule in. I get my rest. Sometimes it'll just be a blanket day off and I just do nothing. And I'll just like try and get me 10,000 steps in. But yeah, it's all about learning yourself. I think don't be scared of when you do get mentally fatigued, and don't immediately label it as burnout, because you would never do it. Like I said, like the analogy I gave before, like a powerlifter would never just be like, all right, well, I've hit my max. That's it. He will always go back and he will always try to, he understands that his body will adapt. And I think people need to understand that their minds will also adapt to the situation that they're put in.
So how can you differentiate between mental fatigue and burnout? How do you know the difference between?
So I'd say mental fatigue, if you have 2 days rest, then, and you're feeling pretty good again, that's mental fatigue. If you have like 2 days rest, 3 days rest, 4 days rest, like a week off, and then you're still feeling low, you still have like negative self-talk, then it's probably something a bit deeper. But every time I find myself fatigued, I'll have a couple of days and then I'll be ready to go back again. So I think it's easier because, like I say, I've got variation. I've got passion about my aircraft job and I've got passion about Lift Each Other. And like I see so much potential both sides and so much fear both sides. So it's just a combination of all those things that I feel like I've only really learned over the past few years in starting the studio business. But training's always been a foundation that I've had, and I've kept consistent at it just because I knew it was something productive to do with my time. It wasn't a waste. And like now I'm 30, I kind of understand so much more about it, what it was doing for my mental health, what it was doing for like my confidence as a person.
How important is it for you to have like-minded people around you, people that support you? Obviously you've got your ride or die, Lauren, who is co-owner and founder of the studio.
Yeah.
How important is it for you that you've got that strong, solid support network?
For me, honestly, it's not important. I feel like I was very individual from like a young age. Like as soon as I finished sixth form, I went to university. I moved to Kingston. I was very self-sufficient. I never really looked back. I've always kind of just done, I don't know, I've always chased progress in one way or another. And I think now I'm kind of learning, no matter how good I get as an individual, I'll never be as good as the team. Like you'll never be able to make up for the team. So like now a huge part of Lift Each Other is trying to build my team around us. So now I'm like, if I need to bring brilliant people into the business, what have I got to offer them in return? One thing I've got is I've built the best studio I possibly can. And then the other system, which I'm currently trying to build at the minute, is our programming platform. And I'm kind of just hoping that that's enough value so I can attract the best possible people to come into the business. Because I know how important they are, and I know I don't have them at the minute. Bar Steve. Steve's one of my coaches, and he's with us. But I need that team. I need more people like Steve with us.
What are your thoughts on motivation?
It's nice when it's there, but you still got to get through it when it's not. And I think when my motivation's not there, my go-to guy is David Goggins. You listen to a bit of David Goggins and you realise life's not that sucky. Like, I can get through this. If he can get through some of the stuff that he's got through, like, I can get through this. Like, and it usually works. Listen to a couple of quotes from Dave Goggins. That gets me through it.
What's your favourite quote?
Obviously, stay hard. Yeah, he's a hell of a guy. Unbelievable. Like, I listened to both of his books and some of the stuff that he's been through. Learning to run on broken legs twice. Like, he fractured his legs during SEAL training, kept on running. And then I think he had an operation on his meniscus, which went horribly wrong. And then they ended up splitting his shin. And then he did like a 440-mile bike ride after that. It's like, if he can get through this where he's actually in physical pain, then I can get out of bed and just go do some training. And I can get to work that day. And I can try and inspire the people around us as much as I can. And then I can do the work on studio, on Leo, my passion afterwards. Like, no problem.
How do you maintain a healthy work-life balance, or do you maintain a healthy work-life balance?
I would say I'm very off balance at the minute, and like, I think that's okay for where I am in my life. I think most of the entrepreneurs, the really successful entrepreneurs that you listen to, will say they were off balance at some point in their life, but that sacrifice was worth it in the long term. Like, you almost have to be utterly focused on your ambition just to make it work. But once it does work, then it's worthwhile. Maybe the balance comes a bit later.
Short-term sacrifice, long-term
Yeah.
gain.
Yeah.
You always hear those quotes, don't you?
Mm.
And like you're saying, in the now, there's a lot of sacrifice going on.
Yeah.
And that's okay for now, because you know that in the future it will help you get to where you want to be.
Yeah. It's at some point in the future. Basically, if you don't stop, then it has to work at some point. It might not be the way you first envisioned it. Like, you might have to stop, and you might have to adapt, and you might have to adjust. But eventually, if you keep doing that process of trying to find the right direction, stopping, adjusting, building, eventually it just has to work. It just has to. And that's what I keep telling myself.
It will.
Yeah.
And it is.
It will.
It will. And
Yeah.
that's something that
I've got
I think...
something so far, but it's not by no means a finished product.
But do you think, is it ever a finished product?
No.
It's always a work in progress,
Yeah,
isn't
it is.
it?
Yeah.
And this is something that I always say to myself, is I feel like you always will be evolving. Your product, your service, it will be evolving. Unless you've got a really fucking awesome product that doesn't need to be changed at all. That's fine.
Yeah, which is...
But you have to keep going. You have to keep on showing up, because, and this is something I always say to myself, and there's been so many moments within business where I've wanted to quit and I've wanted to stop. I remember when I first became a personal trainer at Pure Gym, and I was cleaning these treadmills at like 6 a.m. on like a Monday morning, and I had no clients at this point, and I was getting a little bit disheartened. And I would say I probably had more of like a fixed mindset, and I was like, I don't know why I've not got I don't know why I've not got clients, why is my business not growing, blah, 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 blah. And it's only until I looked like inwards and was like, right, we need to be putting in the work more, and you need to really commit to this. And there was so many times that I wanted to give up, and I just remember saying to myself, but what if you are one day away from a great success, or an hour away from a great
What if?
success?
That's a good question.
You know, what if? And I see so many people give up, and you could be moments away from something completely life-changing. So you literally never know what is around the corner, and you never know what you can achieve if you fully applied yourself to your goals.
Absolutely. That what if? That's a Dave Goggins quote as well.
Is it actually?
He asked himself, what if I could do this? Like, if you're looking too far in the future, like he uses it, like if he's like 40 miles into a race and he's got 60 miles to go, don't look at the 60 mile, look at the next 500 meters. What if I could do that 500? And he gets there. What if I could do the next 500? And he gets there, and just taking it day by day.
That's like my favourite quote, which is,